All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January Small Business Workshop produced by Downtown Raleigh Alliance, 2022 Small Business Recovery Grant Opportunities. My name is Roxanne Lundy, and I'm on the Economic Development team at Downtown Raleigh Alliance. For those of you not familiar with DRA, we're an independent nonprofit contracted by the City of Raleigh to champion downtown development and support and grow the downtown business community. We assist the city in the management and maintenance of the public realm via the safety and hospitality ambassadors. Other investments include social services, storefront recruitment, business retention, arts, and community engagement through programs and activations such as Jazz in the Square, First Friday, Illuminate, and Dine Out Downtown, to name a few. We offer business development workshops like this one, as well as conduct quarterly market reports and produce the annual State of Downtown report and event. So that's a little bit about us. Before we get started, I want to mention that we are recording this presentation and we will upload it to our website later this week. Throughout the presentation today, please use the Q&A feature as part of the Zoom webinar. That feature allows you to submit questions that we'll be able to review. We will cover a lot of information today and we'll try to address as many questions as possible. 2 years since the pandemic hit, we are still dealing with its impact. In today's Small Business Workshop, we will discuss current and upcoming resources available to small businesses in Raleigh. The North Carolina Department of Revenue is managing this Business Recovery Grant Program. This program offers one-time payments to eligible businesses who have suffered significant economic loss. To start the presentation off, we will hear from McKinley Wooten. McKinley is the Assistant Secretary for Tax Research and Equity at the North Carolina Department of Revenue. Thanks for being here, McKinley.
Thank you, Roxanne, and good morning to everyone. And thank you for being here and for allowing us this opportunity to talk to you about this really important grant program going on at the Department of Revenue. Although it sounds cliche, we really and truly believe that small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and they contribute, to our local economies, providing jobs and purchasing local goods and utilizing local suppliers and support services. And yes, paying sales and property taxes, and those tax revenues keep our government services running and our roads paved. And so on behalf of the department, the governor, and Secretary Penny, we thank you, all of you, for the work that you do in your small business. And the pandemic, as Roxanne said, has been tough on all of us, and especially small businesses. And we hope that this business recovery grant program will give some much needed financial relief to small businesses. And at the Department of Revenue, as the tax people, we don't usually have the opportunity to feel like we're doing something good for everyone. So we are delighted, despite the fact that we had to stand up this program very quickly since the budget was passed so late. We've worked hard to get this grant program, and the application process set up. And we look forward to the opportunity to talk to you about it today and to answer any questions that you have. Will Futrell, who is our Strategic Planning and Engagement Officer, is going to do the presentation this morning, and then we'll be available for any questions that you have. So Will, thank you, and I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thanks, McKinley. I hope everybody's having a good morning, but we'll just go ahead and jump in and get into the nuts and bolts of this program that the DOR is administering. So essentially what I want to cover today for everybody is to let you know what exactly the program actually is. We'll talk about the eligibility requirements for the program, and then we'll do a quick walk through the application process. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions you have at the end of the presentation. So what the grant program is, it was enacted in the budget bill that was passed November of last year by the General Assembly and signed by Governor Cooper. and it provides a one-time grant payment to aid North Carolina businesses that suffered substantial economic damage from the pandemic. And the program created two types of grants, the hospitality grant and the reimbursement grant, to help cover a percentage of an eligible business's economic loss due to the pandemic, with a maximum payment amount of $500,000. We opened the application period for the program on December 16th. But if you take away just one thing from this presentation, take note of the deadline to apply for this program. And that deadline is January 31st, the end of this month. And what's important is that you know that we must have received the application on or before that date. So that's especially important if you're planning on, instead of doing electronic applications, but mailing us a paper one, know that you've got to get that in the mail in enough time for us to have received it on or before January 31st. So let's talk about first the hospitality grants eligibility requirements. So the program authorized nearly $300 million for these grant awards, and to be eligible for a hospitality grant, a business must meet all of the following conditions. It must be classified in the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS, code 71 or 72. And those codes are for businesses that are primarily engaged in accommodations, food services, arts, entertainment, and recreation industries. The business must have also suffered an economic loss of at least 20% during the COVID period. And we'll talk more about calculating that loss during these periods later. And finally, the business must be subject to North Carolina income tax imposed by Article 4 of Chapter 105 of the North Carolina statutes. And what that covers is, in generally, a business can only be eligible for the grant if they're subject to corporate income tax, individual income tax, or partnership income tax. And so next we'll talk about the reimbursement grant, and the eligibility requirements are a little bit different for the reimbursement grant, but very important for you to understand. So the program allotted $200 million for reimbursement grants to provide financial aid to businesses suffering because of the pandemic, but weren't able to take advantage of some of the previously enacted federal relief programs. So to qualify for a reimbursement grant, business must meet all of the following conditions. Not classified in NAICS code 71 or 72. So essentially this is for any other type of business. The next two requirements are the same as for hospitality grants. The business must have suffered an economic loss of at least 20% and be subject to North Carolina income tax. But the last requirement is that the business did not receive money, a loan, an advance, a grant, or any other consideration from any of these federal programs listed on the screen. So if you have previously received an award amount from any of those programs, you will not be eligible for the reimbursement grant. So let's talk about how to determine your economic loss. The law tells you how to calculate economic loss, which is based on the amount of your gross receipts in North Carolina that were reduced between what they call the pre-COVID period, which is March 1st, 2019 through February 29th, 2020, and the COVID period, which is March 1st, 2020 to February 28th, 2021. So because of the requirement of calculating your gross receipts, if you do not report your gross receipts on either Form E-500 or Federal Form 1065, the business will not be able to calculate an economic loss for purposes of this grant. So, to figure out how to determine your gross receipts, for most applicants, gross receipts are those that are reported on line 1 of Form E-500, your sales and use tax return. But however, if the applicant did not report gross receipts on line 1 of Form E-500, gross receipts are going to be the sum of the receipts reported on lines 4 through 8 of that form. And you can see on the slide the tax types that are covered in lines 4 through 8. Now, a partnership that filed a federal form 1065, which is the U.S. Partnership Return of Income, may also include gross receipts reported on line 1A of that form, as long as those gross receipts meet the following criteria. They were not reported on Form E500, and they are for transactions that are apportioned to North Carolina. So you could be in a scenario, if you're a partnership, having to include information from both your Forms E500 and your 1065s. So once you've determined you're eligible, how much are you going to be able to receive? If how much of an award are you going to be able to receive? So it's going to depend upon which grant bucket you fall into. Remember that all grant payments for this program are capped at $500,000. The first bucket is if you're eligible for the hospitality grant and you have not previously received an award from any of the federal programs listed, which are the same ones we mentioned earlier, then you may receive a grant of up to 20% of your economic loss. However, if you did receive an award amount from those programs, you may receive a hospitality grant of up to 10% your economic loss. So for the reimbursement grant, if you're eligible for that, you may receive a grant of up to 20% your economic loss. But remember that to be eligible for this grant, you can't have previously received an award from those programs you see on the slide. So if the total amount of grant awards exceeds the funds authorized for the program, the grants will be reduced in order that was established by the legislation. Therefore, a business's actual grant amount will not be able to be determined until all eligible applications are received. So after DOR's received all eligible applications, we'll make all payments by check and mail them to the address provided by the business. I want to take a moment here to highlight if you're mailing a paper application, to mail it to the address you see on the screen, because it is important that you mail it to that address, because it won't be considered received by DOR if it's not sent to that address and transferred to our business recovery grant account in time by January 31st. So you can also fax the application or deliver it to one of our service centers, but the best way to avoid any of this stress that might come with mailing an application or having to go to one of our service centers is to submit an electronic application. And you'll get a lot of benefits from submitting electronically that you wouldn't otherwise get if you chose one of the other methods of applying. You'll get a mailed confirmation that we have received your application. You'll have your economic loss computed for you, and you'll have checkpoints to ensure you've completed all the required fields of the application before submitting. So we're going to dive into to get a better look at what the application looks like via electronic submission. But so before you start filling out the application, you're going to need to gather some information that you'll need. You'll need your business's demographic information, which might include your federal ID number, or if you're a sole proprietorship, your social security number. You also may need your North Carolina sales and use tax account ID, or IDs if you have multiple. You'll need to have your NAICS number, your gross receipts for the pre-COVID and COVID periods that are reported on line 1 of Form E500, or on lines 1 or lines 4 through 8 of E500. And if you're a partnership, you'll need to have the information from your federal Form 1065. Finally, if you have previously received an award from one of those federal programs, you're going to need to attach the relevant documentation to the application. So part 1 of the electronic application, you're going to enter in your business's information, starting with the structural type. Once that's been selected from the drop-down menu, the required fields are going to display with that information needed for your particular structure. Part 2 covers eligibility requirements that I discussed at the very beginning. Here, you'll just have to answer yes or no to 3 questions. And as I mentioned earlier, not every business is going to meet the requirements of obtaining a sales and use account ID. If your business is utilizing your gross receipts from your previously filed sales and use tax return, you're going to need to answer fields 4 and 7 on the application. Know that you'll be required to provide a sales and use tax account ID if the values entered on those lines is greater than 0. Now, if your business is utilizing information from your partnership return, you'll need to complete fields 5 and 8. And once you have entered in those figures, fields 6, 9, 10, and 11 are automatically computed for you. And what you can see at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is an example of one of the checkpoints we've put into the application to help you make sure that you've got all the correct information put into the application and that you're eligible. So part 4 is where you'll attach any of the necessary documentation I mentioned. Note that if you have multiple sales and use tax account IDs, you will need to include those IDs in the attachment. And if you're submitting an amended application, which we'll talk about in a minute, you'll need to include any supporting documentation that may be required. And finally, in part 5 of the application, you'll sign, date, the application, and select finish. And once you've done that, you can print your completed application. And after you've finished completing the application through DocuSign, you'll get the email confirmation I mentioned. So what do you do if after submitting your application, you realize that you've made a mistake or have any other issues with what you originally applied for? You're going to need to submit an amended application, which DOR must receive on or before the deadline. To submit an amended application, you'll just fill it out, or you'll submit an amended application when there are any issues with what you originally applied for, and you'll file it as though the original one was not filed. You'll simply open up the electronic application and select amended application in which you can see is in the top right corner of the application. So before we answer some questions, I do want to just cover some of the common questions we've gotten so far about the program. So the first question is, I've not filed an E500 sales and use tax return during the COVID period. What should you do? You should file and pay the E500 return for the missing periods. You must include the gross receipts that will be reported on line 1 of the E500 when calculating your gross receipts for the COVID period for the grant application. So if a business is not a partnership for federal income tax purposes and does not have a NC sales and use tax ID, is the business eligible for a grant payment? No. So if the business is not a partnership for federal income tax purposes and does not have the sales and use tax ID, you will not be eligible for the grant payment. And the final question is about the deadline, which I cannot stress enough, is January 31st, 2022, and we must have received your application on or before that date. And note that if you use an electronic application, click submit, and you've got that email confirmation that we've received it, that you're good to go. But for any applications submitted by fax, mail, or delivered to our service center, you won't necessarily have the benefit of that immediate confirmation of receipt of that we've received the application. And finally, I want to just provide you with some resources that you can use to apply for the business recovery grant. You'll see that we have the link to our webpage for the program, and there you can access a ton of helpful information about eligibility and our frequently asked questions. This is where you'll also be able to start the electronic application or download a paper application. And finally, if you have any questions about your eligibility or need any assistance with the application, call our helpline. The numbers provided on the screen. We've been checking our call numbers, and the wait time is less than a minute, and they'll be able to help you with the application. And if you have any questions about your records, we may be able to provide them for you depending on what those records are. And that is it for me, and we'll just open up for any questions. I haven't been able to see the chat, but
yeah, Will, there are about 4 questions in the chat. Janasia's question was specific to, she says she's not an LLC, but she's a hairstylist. Could she still get that she would fall in the reimbursement grant pool and not the hospitality pool? As long as she has, I think the response is, as long as she has a sales and use ID.
Yes. So okay. Essentially, the program covers all business structural types, as long as that business is able to calculate their economic loss via Form E500 or right. Form 1065. So if you do file those 2 forms, you would be able to apply for and meet all the other eligibility requirements. You would be eligible for the grant.
Yeah, and well, there seems to be at least a couple of questions about when the business opened. I think there was one right. question. I think Sharon's question was about she opened in 2020, but the pre-COVID period is March 2019 through February 2020. So I guess if she opened in January of 2020, she'd be within the pre-COVID period, but still probably wouldn't have enough receipts.
Correct. So that's a good question, and we've gotten that a lot as well. So if you have opened in the anytime during the pre-COVID period, you will technically be eligible for the grant. But again, like as McKinley said, depending on when you opened, you might not be able to show your economic loss. However, if you didn't open until the COVID period starting March 1st, 2020, you won't be eligible for the grant because you won't be able to calculate your economic loss.
Tamisha had a question regarding, I think she said she opened in 2019, but didn't get her sales and use ID until 2020. That may be one of those more specific questions that we may have to have someone directly talk with her on.
Yes. So, Tamisha, I would recommend either emailing me or calling that helpline number to get that question answered, because that is a very fact-specific question.
And I think someone in the chat did answer that. There's one question about residency, whether you could, your business had to be in Raleigh. I think somebody answered that any North Carolina businesses are eligible for applying for the grant.
Yeah, and I'm seeing in the chat the question whether it's limited to Raleigh or Wake County. No, this is a statewide program. So any business that is subject to in North Carolina income tax is eligible for the grant.
Well, and there was a question about your email. Is it on the last slide, or was it?
Oh, yes, it is. I was
going to say, let's put that up again.
Let's see. And also, I have given Roxanne handouts of these slides to share with y'all. So Roxanne, I guess you'll send those out after the presentation. But if anybody has any other questions or needs any help, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information's on the bottom of that slide, and I'll do whatever I can and to help. But keep in mind, some questions may need to be referred to our helpline, because those are the subject matter experts that we've dedicated to helping answer questions about the program.
Now, because there is one question that's specific about whether the business falls within the NAICS code 71 or 72. And I think that one we would.
Yes, so if you have questions about the NAICS code, I would also encourage you to go to the web page, and I believe the link is in our FAQs about how that will help you. That will take you to I believe the Census Bureau that has helpful information about NAICS codes for businesses.
Yep.
But if you're not able to find your answer there, don't hesitate to call the helpline.
Because there is a link to code 71 and 72 on the website that shows all the businesses that are classified in those code sections.
Regarding so I'm seeing the question regarding the tax return 2019 versus 2020, is that acceptable? I think I'm going to need more information on that. I'm not really sure what question you're asking for that. I do know, so essentially your gross receipts are going to be on, I believe, both your 2019 and 2020 Form E500s. Am I saying that right, McKinley? So
yeah,
because of the COVID periods involved both 2019 and 2020, you'll probably need the information from both of those.
Yeah, because the COVID period for this grant does not necessarily align with kind of the income schedule as well. So All right, Roxanne, I think we hit all the ones that we can, but like I said, Will's email is there, and we'd be more than happy to take those individual questions and send them to the right people to get the right responses.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, McKinley.
Thank you.
Yes, we will be sharing these slides after the presentation is over, and we will also send a link to the presentation recording on our website so that you can review this information. I do want to say that NCDOR is hosting another webinar series on this topic on January 18th. So you can register for that webinar if you want to get this information a second time. But
thanks, Roxanne. I completely missed the plug about our webinar coming up. But yeah, we are hosting a webinar on January 18th at 10 a.m. You can go to our website, and if you look under the outreach tab, you can register there for the program.
Thanks. All right, so now we'll hear from Mark Weldon. Mark is the Business Retention and Expansion Manager for the City of Raleigh's Housing and Neighborhoods Department, Division of Community and Economic Development. Mark will be sharing an update on some of the resources that the City of Raleigh is working on and currently has available.
All right, thank you, Roxanne. And on behalf of the Mayor and City Council and City leadership, thank you, Downtown Raleigh Alliance, for putting this session together today. And I hope that we've got some good information for you. I'm going to be talking about two things today. One is a grant program that is on the way, and we're still putting some finishing touches on it. I'm going to share what we do know at this point, and then also share some information about the Building Upfit grant, which has opened up applications that may be useful to some businesses that are changing business models and could use some financial support to make that happen. Let me go ahead and share the presentation and get that up and running here. Okay, and just I guess a quick recap of some of the things that that the city's been doing in partnership with our partners like Downtown Raleigh Alliance, like Will mentioned on the prior presentation, the pandemic has been no fun for any of us. It's been a challenge. It seems like just when we figure out what we're doing, it changes. But the city's been trying to keep up with various needs from a policy support perspective, things like outdoor dining, parking, curbside pickup, free transit, resources like a series of technical assistance webinars, sort of like the one we're having today, rolling out with our partners Count on Me NC, Wish You Were Here, programs like that, creating a resource library, community partnerships with listening sessions, working very closely with our Business Alliance community, including Downtown Raleigh Alliance and some of our small business support partners like Small Business Center at Wake Tech, SCORE, SBTDC, and many others. And of course, financial support through $1 million in prior city investment in the Raleigh Relief Fund, as well as an impact partner grant cycle with particular attention to the arts community. Let's go ahead and dive into today's material. First of all, just a quick overview of where we fit in the big scheme of things. Like Roxanne said, we're under the Community and Economic Development Division in Housing and Neighborhoods. This is where economic development is focused on small businesses and local Main Street type businesses. We will be focusing on these 4 areas: workforce development, business recruitment, retention and expansion, entrepreneurship and innovation, and small business support. And these 2 things point to the program that we are currently putting together with Carolina Small Business Development Fund. It is a federally funded program that we are putting together for small business support. The quick overview of Carolina Small Business Development Fund, CSBDF is the alphabet version of that. They are an experienced partner. They've been around for a long time, helping small businesses. They were our primary partner with the city to roll out the Raleigh Relief Fund in 2020. We are working with the Federal American Rescue Plan funding, the large bill that passed earlier this year. $5 million of that ARPA money has been approved by City Council in November to fund a new relief program. We are working on that now. The timing would be that we would have the first round of applications planned for early 2022, meaning in the next month or so, and grant payments would be distributed toward the middle of the year, and then there would be a second round available after the autumn. Where we are today, we are currently working through some complex federal compliance requirements, state law alignment, and other program details to make sure that we are handling the federal money in a way that doesn't result in mistakes that would require us to go to a small business and recover those money to ask for money back. We don't ever want to do that. So we are being very careful up front to design the program in a way that's compliant with both federal and state law. More details will be coming out about exclusions and requirement. Stay tuned, and please know that this is the highest priority that our department, as well as the city, has for small business support with COVID at this time. So keep an eye out for future notifications about this. We will be notifying our partners, including Downtown Raleigh Alliance. So you'll hear it from probably us, from Downtown Raleigh Alliance, and maybe some other sources as well. What I can do is tell you what we do know today. It is business financial relief plus assistance. This is different from the 2020 program, which was basically getting cash out to small businesses just as quickly as possible. This program is also going to include an element of financial and technical assistance, where the goal is not only to help recover from COVID and the pandemic impacts, but also to help make the business be more resilient and sustainable, knowing that this pandemic seems to keep taking twists and turns, and we want to help small businesses be as robust as possible to be able to weather any other surprises that come up along the way. The general contours of the program, as approved by City Council in November, would be up to $10,000 based on a factor of monthly operating expenses, and up to an additional $20,000 if the business signs up for more rigorous business assistance and technical assistance, resource and training programs. As a fallback, if that is not sufficient, or if for some reason a business doesn't qualify or is not eligible for much, if any, of that money, then there is also a lending option where for businesses that need something above and beyond this grant type of approach, that is available as well. There's no obligation to follow that program, but it is available. Qualifications. This is for small businesses, and this is actually for businesses in Raleigh, unlike the Department of Revenue program that you just heard about statewide. This is for businesses located inside the city limits of the City of Raleigh. The reason is we're using, that is a City of Raleigh program, so it doesn't make sense for it to go beyond the city limits. Businesses with 49 employees or fewer is the classification for small businesses. This is the same criteria that we have used in the prior Raleigh Relief Fund effort that we put together, as well as our Building Upfit grant that you'll be hearing about in a moment. Businesses that are locally and independently owned, businesses with annual revenue of less than $5 million, and then businesses without any bankruptcies, tax liens, or other open judgments. So that is that's what we know right now about the emerging program with Carolina Small Business Development. Again, keep your eyes out for updates that will hopefully be coming in the coming week or two about more specifics around application periods and the things that you would be able to do to help prepare for that. I would also imagine that there will be some more instructional information and possibly webinars leading up to that. Building Upfit grant, we're going to switch gears here. So this is a grant program that is quarterly, that is actually open at this time. The applications are open until one day before the prior program, the North Carolina Department of Revenue program you just heard about. Deadline is Sunday midnight on January the 30th. This is a program, if you're not familiar with it, it's for commercial property improvement that creates a new business use and adds value to decayed, empty, or underused spaces in commercial buildings. It's exclusively for small businesses. The idea is to increase economic development, tax base expansion, and job creation. We talked about the eligibility for the Carolina Small Business Program. This is very similar, less than 50 employees inside Raleigh city limits. Property pays property tax, so tax exempt properties are not eligible for Building Upfit grant. Bars and taverns are excluded, and exterior updates are ineligible. We do have a facade grant with the city for external exterior stuff, and the two programs are designed to be able to be compatible. So the Building Upfit grant focuses strictly on the interior capital updates of the building. It's a matching grant reimbursement program. There is no advance grant payment. The building owner is responsible for completing the construction upfit project and making sure that the work, the contractors are paid for, the material is purchased, and all of that. After the completion, then once those expenses are documented and shared with the City of Raleigh, after a quick on-site inspection, the city will reimburse up to half of that expense, up to a limit of either $15,000 or $25,000 if it's inside the priority area for economic development, which you can see on the really hard to read map there, but basically it's the green areas that that emanate from the city center out along the main corridors of the City of Raleigh. Program priorities, fundamental purposes for economic development. Grant applications are prioritized based on their relative impact, including overall project investment, square feet improved, and the number of new jobs expected to be added. It's a points-based application, trying to keep it as objective and fair and equitable as possible. There are bonus points if you are inside of that green priority area. Near transit, if you're in a historical property, if there's environmental hazards that have to be abated, and if there's a long-term vacancy that would be activated by the project, by the upfit project. The space activation prioritizes particular bonus points for retail space activation. Retail being a place that would sell consumer goods or just goods recognized by the UDO as retail goods. Some highlights of the program: fiscal year 21, 28 grants were awarded. About $4 million in upfit investment was planned from that. 184,000 square feet and 200 some odd new jobs projected. From an equity perspective, you can see the metrics there. We do work very hard to make sure that this is an equitable economic development program. And then specific to downtown, in the Downtown Raleigh Alliance sphere of interest, we have had 13 grants awarded since COVID for $315,000. 9 of those went to women and minority-owned businesses, and this also has been set up so it's compatible with some of the DRA grants. So how would you use this? This is a program that's been around since 2017. This is not a COVID specific program, but we have been working with applicants over the past, well, 2 years now on some ideas where business owners have been thinking about, well, the business model I've been doing is not working for me right now with the pandemic, with various shutdowns we went through, with customers coming and going as they get more or less comfortable with going out in public, as the weather changes, what have you. So some of the ideas, just to spark maybe some creative thinking for the audience here today. Some applications are around growing their space. So maybe moving into an adjacent unit, maybe expanding into some other, into a second floor where they can activate an adjoining space to allow more distance between customers so the customers are more comfortable to come in. Also allow for more space for additional retail or services that they might want to add to the business in response to the pandemic. We have seen interest in adding specialty manufacturing as the supply chains I don't think this is a secret. Supply chains are a real challenge right now worldwide. There are a lot of small businesses rethinking their supply chains that used to come from overseas, reshoring things, or maybe getting into a do-it-yourself model. So we've seen situations where small businesses are looking at adding some specialty maker manufacturing area where they're taking some unused space that might have been just for storage, using the Building Upfit grant to add HVAC, lighting, electric, plumbing, restrooms, what have you, to add the capability to do some specialty manufacturing. Changing business models. We've had some applicants who in the past had been operating bars that were not getting the customer foot traffic that they were hoping to get, so they pivoted or wanted to pivot to a restaurant model where they could get a more diverse revenue stream, not only from the bar business that at the time was closing and staying closed for an extended period of time, to get some food revenue on that as well. We use the same criteria the state does for those kind of alcohol, I guess, thresholds where less than 70% of the overall business revenue would need to be coming from those alcohol sales. Creating community, activating unused space to create shared workspace and makerspace. The world is becoming more collaborative, especially among small businesses, to create shared working environments where it's not just shared spaces for for designers or technology folks, but it's also becoming shared spaces for ghost kitchens and specialty manufacturing and other co-working ideas where actual production of goods is part of the equation. The application schedule currently for this quarter is open now, and it will be open, like I say, until midnight on the 30th of January. The awards will be announced by February the 18th, which is the second Friday in February, I believe. Some of the guardrails that you need to be aware of for Building Upfit Grant: the project must be completed before the payment. If the project is abandoned, it will not receive any of the grant. There are some timelines that you have to work with. We do have a lot of documentation that explains all of that. Improvements must be maintained. So we do require that the upfit projects that are subsidized by the City of Raleigh would be kept in place in good order for 3 years. Otherwise, there is risk that we would come back and ask for some of that grant money back. And then from a baseline economic impact threshold, we do require a minimum project size of $10,000, which would equate to a $5,000 grant payment. Other considerations: we do need to operate inside of North Carolina law for business incentives. So that's where, if you see some crazy requirements, that's sometimes where that comes from. Sorry, state colleagues. Application time is critical, that there is a requirement that no permits are applied for and no work begins before the awards are announced. So for this coming quarter, what that means is that if you are to apply for the Building Upfit Grant, you are not able to start your project or even apply for permits until February the 18th. So keep that timeline in place. That is a provision that keeps us compliant with state law. And from a payment time perspective, the city does move a little bit slowly on the back end. So just know that you'll have, we'll work with you on how to think about how to handle your cash flow, your cash management at the end, while between the time that the project is complete and when you do receive that reimbursement check, which can take several weeks. For more information, there's a bunch of information online on our website. We have a brochure that goes into a lot more detail, and frequently asked questions which go into even more detail than that try to address specific situations. You can also find examples of past use of Business Upfit Grant in our economic development reports that come out quarterly and annually. Just one last commercial message for some of our small business support partners. I mentioned them at the beginning of the presentation. These are all free resources for small businesses that you may or may not know about. Sometimes they're Raleigh's and North Carolina's best kept secrets. But this list of businesses here and this presentation will also be available to everybody here today. If you don't know about these organizations, I would encourage you to check into these organizations. They are there to support businesses just like yours every day, with everything from how to connect you to resources like accountants or legal, how to get registered with the North Carolina Secretary of State, best practices in running a small business, how to get yourself more profitable, and so on and so forth. So hopefully there will be a couple of resources here that you'll find valuable that you may not have known about before today. And that's it for my presentation, Roxanne, and happy to take questions about the Building Upfit Grant program. I don't really have much else that I'm able to share on the Carolina Small Business one until we get that one all squared away.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. Okay. So we don't have questions about the Building Upfit Grant at this time, but we can certainly connect folks with you if any come through in the meantime.
And Roxanne, I just want to follow up on one of the questions that was asked that I mentioned I need more information. So I think the question was essentially if you have a monthly filer or a quarterly filer, and since that doesn't match up with exactly with like the COVID period and pre-COVID periods, what you can do is on the application there some really detailed instructions on how to handle how to calculate that with your quarterly and monthly forms. But I just wanted to put that plug in, and if anybody has any more questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you. Well, real quick, we will just go through kind of highlighting what Mark touched on. Oops. There we go. Highlighting what Mark touched on. DRA offers a storefront upfit grant. And so this is an additional, we've heard about the great resources, the grant program through the state and the resources that the city has available. But DRA also has a grant program to new businesses looking to open in downtown Raleigh, or for existing retail businesses looking to expand by 30% or more. So that is called the Storefront Upfit Grant. This grant covers the upfit and stand-up expenses needed to open. Originally, this grant was designed for retail businesses, but DRA has recently expanded the eligibility to include restaurants and service-based businesses within the Fayetteville Street District and Moore Square District, as well as pop-ups. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Available funding is tiered based on the type of business, but all women-owned and minority-owned businesses qualify for an additional $2,500 in grant support. So this is a great program to review if you're looking to open in downtown Raleigh. Also, for women and minority-owned retail businesses, DRA has partnered with startup Wake Tech and LM Restaurants to launch the pop-up shops at Martin Street. So that's another opportunity to check out. This is a retail incubator that provides affordable retail space and business counseling services. So definitely reach out if that's something that you're interested in. I can send the links for more information. And then just to kind of reiterate what Mark already mentioned, that there are lots of free resources out there that provide counseling services as well as networking advice and connections to small business loans as well as other grant programs. So that's the Wake Tech Small Business Center that's now called Startup Wake Tech, Launch Wake County, SCORE, the Women's Business Center of North Carolina, the Small Business Technology Development Center. This helps your business scale and grow. And then NCDOR Foundation, they also do some small grant programs as well. So lots of resources out there, and I'm again happy to help connect you to them. In terms of DRA's marketing resources, if you are a current business in downtown Raleigh, or you just want to stay connected to what's going on and what's available, I definitely recommend following us on our social media channels. We also do newsletters that share information to anyone who's interested on what's going on in downtown. But then there is also a storefront newsletter specific to downtown Raleigh businesses that share information about the workshops and business information specific to our downtown Raleigh business community. And then we also do blog posts to highlight different activities, foods, and things going on in downtown. So definitely recommend getting plugged into DRA's marketing resources. Our website has a lot of foot traffic, as well as our different social media channels. And then, of course, feel free to contact me via email or on my work line or mobile. I am here to help connect you with any information that we talked about today, and then other resources available within downtown Raleigh. So thank you so much for being here. We will email everyone the presentation as well as the link to this recording. And I look forward to staying in touch. If there aren't any other questions, we will go ahead and end it for today. I want to thank Mark Weldon, Will Futrell, Will Gaskins, as well as McKinley Wooten for participating. I hope everyone has a wonderful week and stays warm.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, everyone.